Episode of Detonation, where we are busy putting death out of business, and we've got Mr. Kerecz back and Johan Benzion 2020 campaign, just steaming ahead at full pace. And you know, last episode, not last episode, the episode before, we had just had a big roundup of USTP news with Gennady Stolarov II, USTP chairman. If you want to catch up on some of the more fundamentals on the USTP news and the latest USPT PT update, go and check out the release on the United States, the transhumanist-party, transhumanist-party.org. Go and check that out. But for now, we have Mr. John Kerecz and Benzion 2020 here to talk with us right now. Mr. Kerecz, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to having Ben tell us a little bit about Princeton this past weekend and give us an update on that. I am so sorry I missed it. I really did want to get to it. But being the weekend before our Thanksgiving here in the States, family had a lot of other plans for me, shall we say. So I didn't make it.
That's all right. You're forgiven, and you're a hardworking person for the transhumanist cause and the transhumanist party anyway. So we thank you as always. And Benzion, how are you?
I'm feeling pretty well. It's true. I spent this weekend at Princeton. Did a workshop at Princeton Envision, and got to meet some incredible presenters there, and spent some time with the young people doing great work there. So we judged a competition for new ideas, and also just got to see some incredible presentations. Got to spend a few hours talking to Dr. Anders Sandberg, the great AI researcher from the Future of Humanity Institute, and many other folks like this. Was able to meet up with them. Hod Libson. I spent Aubrey de Grey, of course, did a wonderful presentation. We got to see Liz Parrish again. I got to not only watch the presentation from our friend from the post-human studies and the post-human research group, Francesca Ferrando, but also sat down with her crew, and she and Julian and I had a wonderful interview about transhumanist politics and about the Futurist New Deal for America, my platform. And it was just really so many great people. Got to see Robin Hanson again, and he did a number of presentations. So many incredible speakers going on there at Princeton Envision 2019. I really recommend that folks check that out next year and participate in that process. I was particularly happy that I got to meet a young man named Kai Landry. He's came all the way from Barcelona to share his incredible experience. He has an upgrade. He's a cyborg, and he has a new sense. It allows him to sense sounds that are being transmitted from space, and then he creates music by sharing and interpreting those sounds. This is not something that he was born with. It's something that's a feature of his upgrade, and it's really an incredible thing. And I got to spend a little bit of time with he and his friends, and also enjoy the wonderful music that he made. Really, an awful lot of wonderful people there to see, and I was really glad to do it and do a few interviews besides.
Fantastic, really good to hear. And hearing about that gentleman's upgrade has got me really spaced out. What do you think about that, Mr. Kerecz?
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I was, matter of fact, talking about upgrades, I watched that newest Fast and the Furious-based movie this weekend with Statham and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and their villain was kept throughout the show getting upgrades. So I kind of had to laugh. It kind of made me feel like it was right up our line of work there, Yeah, that is very interesting. Where can you find out more information about that young man? Is he online, or any of the things he does online? We can look him up.
Yeah, I believe that you can. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to meet a few folks who are cyborgs or grinders, and a lot of different biohackers as well. And they always have they're always doing things that are positive. We shouldn't. I think we should resist the urge to think of these things in terms of these science fiction movie tropes.
Yeah, but it was still enjoyable though, you know.
Yeah. He's definitely on Instagram at Kai.Landry, and I hope I'm not confusing him with another artist. Yeah, here he is. It's Kailandre, and you can I think you can check out his stuff if you use that search. But yeah, he's a young man. He's only 19 years old, and he's been doing these kind of presentations ever since he acquired this new sense, and it was really nice. The music was actually lovely. Sometimes this kind of music, you don't quite know what to expect when you hear about something like this, but it was actually quite nice. And there's at every one of these type of events and similar things that I've gone to, oftentimes there is one or a few people who we would call cyborgs or biohackers. And I just want to say again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when you meet these people, reach out to them, learn about their experience, because they're not dangerous folks, and they're trying to do something, and by doing that in a public way, I think they are doing an awful lot to advance the things that we talk about here. But these guys are taking a real risk in doing this, just in the way that they're putting themselves out there. And Kai Landry was really a lovely man.
And I've noticed that the Zoltan Itzvan campaign is reaching out to biohackers, including Ryan O'Shea and others, incorporating them into a mainstream sort of talking point. They're doing something positive, and they're doing it in their own sort of way. And it's the FDA, and it's there's limitations to biohacking and grinding, which does make it unsafe in some forms. Because the government has, in a way, it's got to reform and in some places get out of the way, and some places make it easier for illegal biohacking and grinding to occur. And Chairman Stolov, he obviously protested against some atrocious laws that were trying to be pushed in some municipal governments and other things. But the biohacking grinding community definitely doing a great job.
It's funny you mentioned that because I actually told Kai Landry and this other group of assembled biohackers about this legislative victory that Gennady had spearheaded, and where he was able to protect folks from being prohibited from doing precisely what folks like Kai and Zoltan have done, and they were all very impressed. So I think the United States Transhumanist Party, people are starting to really understand what we're doing in terms of these policy undertakings and all of these things, and it's nice to be able to sort of witness that as people are beginning to realize, oh yes, this is a good group of folks. This is a good policy club, and they're fighting the good fight on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, and and that is the thing. We have to get this message out there that the United States Transhumanist Party represents them and their issues with ethical, practical, legal, and other ways. We have the advocacy points, and we have the policy points to make it a better world for these people. And I totally agree. Mr. Kerecz, you're a cyborg. You've got lots of cyborg parts. Would you like to get music from space?
They're not that enjoyable. They enable me to keep doing things I used to do before the real parts went bad. But I myself would be interested, especially in being able to have my mind attached to like Google. It would be great if you didn't have to use your phone and you could just pull up the information you wanted. I would find that fascinating. That's what I would really like.
There was one of the last presentations at Princeton Envision was a, a science writer named Susan Schneider, who was talking a lot about these exocortex ideas and this emerging field of mind design, where we can genetically or otherwise be enhancing our minds and creating dramatically new capacities. And this is an area that we've talked about a lot on. We have discussed this a lot in this show in the context of whether Neuralace is some kind of IQ maximizer, and similar technologies will change the human form and the human mind, particularly in such a way that that will have these new capacities. And she's testified before Congress quite recently, even just a few days before this presentation, articulating some of her concerns as to the dangers of this. She feels that, and I'm not inclined to agree with her across the boards, but she feels that being able to fundamentally change what the human mind is and improve upon it there's a lot of serious problems there that could even lead to problems for the United States. And so there were many interesting presentations of this kind throughout the first day of Princeton Envision was also focused on advanced algorithms. The second day tended to be focused on life extension folks and the life sciences. And then the third day was also it was a little bit more mixed, but it was leaning it was heavily balanced towards the AI stuff again. Yeah,
Well, these are absolutely complementary, and I'm not surprised. And the Future of Life Institute, I think, right? Future of Humanity Institute. They were represented there, yeah.
Yes, yes, that's true. In fact, I met many folks from the Future of Humanity Institute, and of course, most famously is Andrew Sandberg, and it was pretty fun because I got there a little bit early, an hour or two before they even started gearing up for the main events. Andrews was already there at that time. We were sitting in the presenters lounge together, and I hadn't met him, only corresponded through these other groups that we participate in. And so I got to meet him in person, and then we sat down for about 2 hours and talked about different existential risk related notions. And it was really a nice time. It was kind of a good way to kick off this weekend for me. But I met a lot of people who had also interned, other people who weren't presenters, but who'd been doing incredible work nevertheless. Folks who are interned at the Future of Humanity Institute. So they were well represented. They were well represented there. I should also mention that Phil Torres, the founder of the X Risks Institute, some similar ideas. He also did a presentation on the first day, and it's quite impressive. And he described some troubling prospects, but also some good ideas with dealing with these kinds of existential risks.
And what do you say after talking to Andrew Sandberg about this notion that Elon Musk has of integrating to defeat the AI? This Neuralace, Neuralink idea, where to hopefully aim for a benevolent singularity, we have to integrate with the AI to understand it. Did you talk about this with Mr. Sandberg, and has he changed your mind, and or do you agree on anything, or are you rethinking the idea?
Yes. Well, a lot of what he discussed in conversations with myself and others, and in his presentation, certainly was on the management of these higher impact existential risks, and but he wasn't specifically focused on cyborgization and such as a means to deal with that, but it did come up quite a lot. And generally speaking, I think this is true of almost everyone here at this event, people were at least open to this prospect and considered it a possible way to ensure that humanity survives the 21st century. The striking dissent to that notion that I already mentioned was Susan Schneider, who was tending to take a somewhat opposite view, but she also was describing the science as being more developed than maybe some of these other people tended to describe it. So and she certainly had the insights into that. She was working with people doing this work, and as I mentioned, testifying before Congress on the subject. But she was concerned. Basically, she described a friend of hers who had a serious memory condition, could not remember anything. But because of emerging technology, this person who was basically severely mentally handicapped was now able to be a very high functioning person because of an artificial hippocampus, in a word, that allowed her to use this kind of exocortex technology to dramatically improve their skills and functioning in the world. And the question that she posed of the most of all of these is that when we upgrade ourselves to in various ways, and much of the mind design that she was describing was surgical or gene therapy implementations, not simply using a special hat. But when we do any of these things, we might become so dramatically different that there's a loss of self, that we might become disconnected from the values of our former selves and humans around us in a very real way, and that this itself could lead to existential risks. It was a fascinating talk, one of many. I got to see, as I mentioned, Robin Hanson again. I've loved some of his talks on related subjects, and of course his book, The Age of M, I've enjoyed. And so we sat and had dinner for he and I, and it's always a pleasure to sit at the feet of such folks and be absorbing the great amount of wisdom that they've acquired.
I just wanted to say that is a topic that's very close to me, since dementia genetically runs in my family, and I've had some discussions too about losing yourself with doctors and nurses. One thing I noticed taking care of my mother was, if she would get up and not actually be fully awake, but be in that state you normally call sleepwalking, she would actually be more physically and mentally functional than when she was fully awake, because she had dementia and had 2 strokes. But yet when she was in the sleepwalking phase, she could use her left side more, and she could also have a more extended conversation. But when I said to the doctor and the nurses, what about the idea of, and one of them was somebody that was still in medical school and was talking to the professors about this too, what about the idea of actually triggering that the person would stay in this phase, because she was obviously more functional. And I know myself, one time when I totaled a car into a tree, I was walking around talking to people for half hour to 45 minutes, and it wasn't me totally, but I was functional. But their whole point was there would be loss of self, and the person that would be there isn't really you. But to me, it was like, well, what's the better part? To be a person that's not fully functional, or to be a fully functional person it is still you, but it's not your full persona. So you actually do lose you in entirety, but it's still a fraction of who you were, and you're more functional. So I myself think I probably would want to be that way.
I agree. And it's also hard to imagine that in this uplifted form, where you have a tremendous amount of more insight and perception and abilities, where if you are, for example, merged in a super intelligent form with a supercomputer, that you could not run as a subroutine that former self in a reasonable way as well. So I don't imagine that if you really do develop these capacities to such a high degree that you'll be losing anything at all, only be gaining new worlds, and still be
Well, the
able
other
to
thing
maintain.
is what you gain might be far more than what you lose, and that I think is an equation that people have to look at. And we talked earlier about my fake parts, and I've gained mobility and no pain. There's things I can't do I used to be able to do, but people that don't know that I have metal in my leg and fake ceramic and screws and all kind and titanium, they don't know this. They don't know part of my eyes are fake, and I have no focus, and one's distance and one's reading. I mean, you've been with me, Ben, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't know the difference. Yes. But I have given up some functionality for functionality that I had lost, if that makes sense. So to me, it was worth it. So, I mean, you do have to weigh that thing. And, yeah.
So there's always trade-offs with life. You trade off one thing for another, and you're saying that extends not only to the human body with different functionalities as stabilization and enhancements, but also to the mind with trade-off of function for cognitive essence. It's an interesting topic. It's an ethical topic. It's something people have to think about.
Sounds like a whole other show.
Yeah, and it's the same with dementia and all this other stuff. But as Ben always says, as Benjamin Franklin always says, it's all about prevention, and that's what we really have to actually do. Is we have to prevent a lot of the diseases from arising. There's been a massive enhancement in health and safety and occupational health and safety in especially in the 21st century, but throughout the 20th century as well. The Industrial Revolution was a horrible time for health and safety in the work sphere, but that has dramatically improved over time. And now as we go into space, we're starting to realize that that's going to extend out into space as space becomes a workplace. I have to run, but Ben, did you get to meet anybody there involved with space?
Oh, yes. Well, actually, perhaps one of the most eminent of the presenters, he did present remotely, was Peter Diamandis, who, of course, is a chairman of the X Prize Foundation and has worked on so many spacefaring initiatives and undertakings, and is, of course, a devotee as much to space travel as he is to longevity. So it was really an honor to be able to sit and listen to him, and he did promote presently, but in an interactive fashion. So we were able to ask him questions, and it was quite impressive to see that. Yeah, all of these presenters brought some unique insights. So, for example, Dr. Ruha Benjamin was one of the speakers, and she spoke about her book. Race After Technology, Abolitionist Tools for the New Jim Code, a recent book out in 2019. And she had really interesting insights into the failings of various tech institutions in addressing and not only failing to address, but sometimes inadvertently perpetuating some of these problems with institutional inequities. So it was really fascinating to get some interesting insights. Also, it was very cool to see the director of the Creative Machine Labs, Hod Lipson, who I mentioned for a moment. He's somebody who's done an awful lot with designing robots and also with significant breakthroughs in machine learning. So it was really an incredible weekend seeing all of these folks.
Mr. John Kerecz, have you got any final words? I've got to run.
No, I'm glad Ben gave us an update on Princeton this weekend. Again, I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm glad we got an update. It sounds like it's very interesting and something to try and put on our schedule for next year.
Yes, absolutely. I would recommend it to everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kerecz, for coming on today, both other show and now. And thank you very much, Ben Zion, for calling in. And we're really glad you're back safe and you had a great time at Princeton. And thanks for that great update. Thank you, everybody, for coming on Detonation. And we'll see you again really soon. I think we're talking about the brain next. But thank you very much. That's Detonation. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yes, thanks.